Call this work session of the San Marcos City Council to order. Today is Tuesday, September 16th of 2025. The time is 3:05. Apologies for the late start. We've had some technical issues here in the chambers. So we are now ready. So Ms. Trevino, if you will call the roll.
Yes, ma'am. Ms. Rodriguez. Here. Mr. Saul Gonzalez. Ms. Garza.
I'm here now.
Thank you. Mayor Houston.
Here.
Mr. Scott. Mr. Mendoza.
Here.
And Mr. Lorenzo Gonzalez. We have a quorum present.
Okay, first up is our citizen comment time period. We have a couple of people online and one here in chambers. So the City Council will hear citizen comments at regular meetings, workshops, and work sessions. Those wishing to speak up must sign in advance. If you are online, when it's almost your turn, a pop-up question is going to appear on your screen, and you must be able to respond to it in order to be able to speak and turn on your video when you're called upon. Speakers may speak once during the citizen comment time period and may not yield time to others. You have 3 minutes to speak after you state your name. A timer is displayed on the screen, and you'll start in the green bar. When you have less than 20 seconds left, it'll be yellow, and there'll be a ping. And when the timer is red, your time to speak is up, and a bell will ring. If you hear a popping sound, please step back from the microphone a little bit. The mayor and council will endeavor to ensure that meetings are conducted in a courteous manner and in an atmosphere free of defamation, intimidation, personal insults, profanity, or threats of violence. If you do any of those, you'll hear the gavel. I'll ask you to leave the council chambers. This is your warning. Our speakers today, we have 3, and it's Bobby Levinsky, Maxfield Baker, and Amy Camp in that order. Ms. Trevino, is Mr. Levinsky on? We don't see him. Okay, then Mr. Baker, it is your turn.
Hey, my name is Maxfield Baker. I am the founder of the San Marcos Civics Club. And yeah, what I'm here to applaud you all on is you're uptaking an ordinance that we've been asking you all to consider, which is the right to organize. Organizing is fundamentally important to ensuring our rights. It's how we as community members can stand together and take care of things in our neighborhood. And for a lot of people that are renters in San Marcos, which is 71% of our population, their neighborhood is their apartment complex. And there are active barriers now that can keep them from actuating on their ability to organize. So you all have a fantastic presentation put together by staff and by legal, as well as with advice from the Texas Rio Grande Legal Aid and the Austin Tenants Council. And again, of course, the work we've done as an engaged citizen group. So we hope that you all consider that and move forward, and we really appreciate that. It's so uncontroversial that I don't even have to take my whole 3 minutes to say it, but I'm going to spend the rest of my time talking about some other exciting things the San Marcos Civics Club has going on. We last year put out our inaugural candidate questionnaire, focusing on access and transparency to local government. We have done the same again this year. So Councilmember Mendoza and others that are running for office, Councilmember Saul Gonzalez, as well as everybody else running for office, you all got those the day after filing. So we look forward to receiving that. Our questionnaire will be due the day before voter registration, which is going to be on October 6th. So we hope that you all get that in and that everybody register to vote as well. Tied to that, when we sent out the candidate questionnaire, again, the day after filing, we also sent out a request for these candidates to join us at our second annual candidate forum, and that is going to be held Thursday, October the 16th. We were real quick to get it out there because we know a lot of you candidates are going to be super busy and get lots of invitations, so we wanted to have the invitation out day one so that you can mark your calendars and be there for that event. Again, we held this last year. Mayor Houston was in attendance. We thought it was a really great way and a unique experience compared to other candidate forums that we've seen in San Marcos and in my time being engaged with local politics. The last thing that I want to mention is our somewhat controversially named Reasons Not to Vote rally. Again, this is our second annual event where we'll be hosting that at Tantra on October the 4th. And again, this is before voter registration ends, so it's a last chance to actually come out. We are registering voters, but we want to give space to folks that feel like there are reasons not to be engaged in the political process. Some of that is the very right to organize being questioned, and whether we have freedom of speech to do these things. So we hope that people come out and enjoy this event. We're going to have Addict Ted playing music. We're going to have When the River Speaks reading poetry. And of course, we're going to have a great night of community to embrace each other and get out the vote. Thank you very much.
Our next speaker is Amy Camp.
Hello.
We can see and hear you.
Hi, Mayor Houston, council members. My name is Amy Camp. I am a resident of San Marcos, and I just wanted to speak in favor of the tenants' right to organize, as I have in the past. Thank you so much for taking this up. The right to organize is so important in so many different arenas of life. The ability to feel like you can speak freely and raise issues freely without fear of retaliation, punishment, intimidation. So important. But especially, with tenants, we have so many tenants here. We have a lot of people moving in and out, a lot of instability. And I think that having a right to organize could really help reduce that in some ways, because I think that when people feel happy and comfortable and supported where they live, they're not so eager to move and hope that the next place is better. I think with our large student population, so many young people being here, the right to organize is so important because we have a lot of people coming in who just aren't going to know their rights and are going to need that help. So I won't take up any more of y'all's time, but thank you so much for taking it up. Thank you.
Okay, and Mr. Levinsky hasn't come in online.
Let me double check that, Mayor. No.
Okay, then we will move on to presentations, item 1.
Receive a staff presentation, hold discussion regarding a proposed tenant rights to organize ordinance, and provide direction to staff.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. Council requested a discussion item at the August 5th, 2025 council meeting regarding a tenant's right to organize ordinance. The item was discussed and staff was directed to bring a draft ordinance to the September 16th work session for council review and comment, so here we are today. A draft ordinance has been included in the packet for discussion. The next step is for staff to bring back an ordinance for first reading based on council input and direction this afternoon. Without further ado, I will turn it over to Director of Neighborhood Enhancement, Greg Carr. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Greg Carr, Director of Neighborhood Enhancement. Good. So we're bringing this back. We talked about it during the discussion item, and just wanted to remind us that this was one of our strategic goals from our visioning session, and get right into it. So just some of the purpose: it establishes a tenant's right to organize. It lets renters collectively advocate for better living conditions, fair treatment, and stronger protections in housing. As Mr. Baker did say, that we are a unique community, is we're upside down on the renter versus owner occupied, which is totally different than most communities. Next slide. So what would happen is the city manager would designate somebody to administer this program, and then that administrator would take the ordinance and do some of the fine tuning, how to do complaints, how to get the information out to people. That would be their job. Next slide. So just some of the bullet points on it. It gives a tenant organizer or organization the right to talk to other tenants and organize them, post and put out information, meet with tenants on site with the help of maybe another organization to talk about things, to invite tenant organizers to assist with the organizing, conduct door-to-door surveys, and participate. All the participation is voluntary. Now, there's a couple things in the ordinance that we tightened up a little bit from Austin. Yes, this is very similar to Austin. Is it word for word? Not quite, but one of the concerns we had is preemption, and Austin has had theirs in effect. In fact, talking to them, they have a few changes that are specific to Austin that they would like to change, but don't want to do that because they don't want to get a challenge. So they're leaving things the way they are. So some of the things that I did change would, on like the door-to-door surveys, or if you leave a flyer, the landlord has the right and ability to say, you need to pick up your mess. If they leave a mess, they need to pick it up. Another item is, this isn't for people from the outside to just come in, it has to be tenant-led. So if there is an organizing partner that they're with, that needs to be with the tenant. They can't just be there by themselves. They need to be with somebody that actually lives there. Next slide. Now, some of the stuff that's prohibited is the landlord cannot hinder the organizing activities or the use of the premises. Now, the use of the premises would be just like any other use that a tenant would have to use it. This doesn't give them extra rights. It's just, I live there, and if I can use it to have a birthday party or something, I can use it to talk to the tenants about organizing. They can't interfere with the communication, blocking or posting of materials, or preventing meetings or invitations. Next slide. Now, landlords can still contact tenants related to concerns. This doesn't mean that a landlord doesn't have the right to talk to their tenants about things that they're doing. They can specify which bulletin boards in the common area can be used. They do have the right, if something's discriminatory or defamatory, they can remove that. They can request that the tenant and all their guests comply with the code of conduct that they have that's in their lease. Again, this is where it's requests the removal of litter and exercise reasonable limitation on time, manner, and place activities. And this is more the just common sense. Like Mr. Baker said, this is a neighborhood, this is our neighborhood, so you don't want to disturb neighbors by having late or loud meetings and stuff. Next slide. So tenant conduct and lease compliance, this does not prevent holding the tenant to their lease. Means they have to pay, they have to not have unruly guests. If they're not allowed pets, then they can't have pets. Or if they have to register their cars, they have to register cars. They still have to do all this. And activities must comply with the lease and the laws. Next slide. Violations are misdemeanors under this proposed ordinance, but this isn't going to be enforced by licensed peace officers. It'll be handled kind of like a code does, where we file with the city court, and then they send out a request for the person to show up, and then if they don't show up for that, it's against the court. It's not, we're not making arrests for this. We're not going to be making arrests. And the violation, if something happens, that doesn't mean that whatever else is authorized and allowed by law for both the tenant and the landlord, those are still their options. Next slide. So to summarize, it gives the tenants collective interest to get together and talk. It balances the rights versus landlord prerogatives. Provides some clear definitions and protections for both the tenants and the landlords, and encourages lawful tenant organizing and communication between landlord and tenants. Next slide. The next step is just to seek your guidance. I know there's probably going to be a few changes for what we provided, and then if everything goes good, we'd like to bring it back at the October 8th council meeting. And at this time, I will take your suggestions, comments, and questions.
Ms. Rodriguez?
Thank you, Mr. Carr, for all your work on this, and especially collaborating with the San Marcos Civics Club on this. I've been hearing you've been a great community partner, and I really do appreciate that. And especially thank you to my colleagues for getting us to this point. As Mr. Carr mentioned, there were some slight touches. I know that during our last conversation, some of the suggestions that were brought forward, one of them being to essentially start from scratch. As Mr. Carr mentioned, this ordinance was passed in Austin in 2022, HB 2127, which is known as that Death Star preemption bill, that was enacted in 2023 and has since been in place. The ordinance itself has since survived that and been in place ever since, so it's still applicable. I mentioned that to say, given, as Mr. Carr already hinted at, given preemption, and not necessarily wanting to invite challenges to what we're trying to do here, it is highly recommended that we keep the language as presented and not do what was proposed last time. So I just wanted to preface that. I did speak with, we received some comments on the messaging board, or the message board, so thank you to the mayor for putting her comments there ahead of time. I do want to take the time to address those, but Mayor, if you're comfortable, I will address the amendment
Go right ahead.
that I was going to do first, and perhaps as far as legislative intent, we can get to yours second. So, I know for the sake of the viewing public, perhaps we can pull up the ordinance just so we can orient people to where we're talking about. And while I give staff some time to get that pulled up, for my colleagues, it was included in your packet, the proposed agenda, so I want to take our eyes to page 2, specifically under the interference prohibited section. And now we're getting that pulled up online. Thank you. So we'll go to page 2.
Which is page 16 of the packet.
Thank you, Mayor. All right, so when we get into interference prohibited, this is, as Mr. Carr mentioned, there are some tweaks in our language versus Austin. We'll look at section B, subsection 7. And for the viewing public, you'll see a tenant from, the language, a tenant from inviting tenant organizers, and we're talking about actions that are, would be considered interferences. When we talk about a tenant from inviting tenant organizers to assist with organizing, that section that comes after the comma, the if accompanied by the tenant. After speaking with staff, I definitely appreciated this inclusion of language, particularly because there are gated communities and we want to make sure that, you know, it's not necessarily we're encouraging trespassing, right? But the one amendment that I will have on this particular section was when we say if accompanied by the tenant, the usage of the word the. It implies that there is supposed to be a point person. And we know that nowhere else in this ordinance it identifies a need for a point person. And so the amendment that I would be proposing would be to change the usage of the word the to a tenant. And that allows anybody who has a lease with that property to be able to fill the role of accompanying a potential organizer that's coming from outside. So we're still making sure that it's people that are allowed on the property, but not necessarily locking in one person that may act as a potential barrier to participation. And then, like I said, I know the mayor, we're gonna talk about another change, and so I'll definitely pass that over to you, and we can talk about sort of intent.
And Councilmember, I don't know, Mayor, would you like to take each one of these separately?
I think
or
we should.
separate?
Let me take everybody's temperature on that one. It's
Okay.
not a motion to amend because we're still just conversating about this right now.
Yeah, I wanted to definitely give y'all some time to kind of look through it and understand the intent.
But are y'all good with
So there's
the
one more,
change?
if I can interrupt here. So in the rights established section, B5, it's the same thing. So it's just another change. It's the same.
You're right.
Thank you, Mr. Carr, appreciate that. Yes.
We do appreciate that. So, this looks good to me. I agree because I think the could get complicating and confusing. I might be the organizer, I might be over here. I might ask Mr. Scott, would you go meet so-and-so from wherever? So, I'm good with it. Ms. Mendoza, Mr. Scott? Okay. So that's a change that we'll see when it comes back, unless either one of y'all have, if there's a reason. Okay,
Sounds good.
all right. And if you'll go on to your next one.
Yes, ma'am. The only other additional one that we had is going to be, and this stems from a comment that you had made the last time, and then as well as on the message board, so I appreciate you letting me know ahead of time. So when we talk about, it's going to be page 1, specifically the definitions section. Appreciate that. So I talked with some of the people who were responsible with crafting the Austin ordinance. And one of the questions, and obviously as far as legislative intent, the mayor can always add to anything I'm about to say. But one of the conversations for the public that wasn't here last time is when we see in subsection 3, as far as the definition of landlord is concerned, at the end of that, there's a stipulation that explicitly says, but does not include a property manager or agent, okay? So for the viewing public, the reason this conversation took place was because oftentimes when you go onto a premises, you may not be dealing with the landlord. The landlord may own the property, but they may be in Dallas, San Antonio, Houston, which would essentially could delay the notification of a potential violation under this ordinance as written. And so I guess what the mayor is specifically looking for, and like I said, Mayor, correct me if I'm wrong, is a separate definition that would include for notification purposes a property manager or agent. Obviously, when we talk about offenses and penalties, the language is already pretty clear on that is specifically for a landlord, so we're not proposing in this change that the property manager or the agent would be a recipient of that violation or penalty. It's just inclusion as far as, notification purposes are concerned.
Just a comment, if the council is inclined to go with that change, I would work with Mr. Carr, and we'll make sure references throughout the ordinance where it may need to be appropriate would be included.
Well, actually, we're going to talk about where we want to put the on-site manager as opposed to landlord, because in much of this, landlord is the perfect spot or that something needs to go to. Whenever you're talking about legal stuff and other things, I understand you want to talk to the landlord, totally support that. My concern is the property manager is the one that's going to be on site. And if somebody's handing out flyers, they're likely the one that's going to come out and say, you can't do that. And we want to make sure that we address that they know, yeah, as long as they're abiding by the ordinance, yeah, they can. So that was my concern previously. So I think we need to be careful exactly where we put the manager, but there's not any intent to replace landlord through this with property manager in any way, because I agree with you. There's times when that's who you need to be dealing with.
Mm-hmm. And one of the conversations that we had as far as areas are concerned, on page 2 under interference prohibited, you do have subsections or sections A, B, and C that talk about a landlord may not. It's getting into those behaviors that are essentially blocking the participation of organizing. And so anything like that is definitely what the area of concern is. We want to make sure that they're held to the same standards and not interfering as already required under the ordinance. And that was it for me. I didn't know if I didn't see any other concerns presented on the message board, and so I guess we can gauge our colleagues' temperature on that change as well.
So we're talking under this 46094 interference prohibited. We were in the right place. Under A and B, that we can say a landlord or property manager? And just both of those cases, and that may be the only place that it is, because when we're talking about like offense and penalty, I think we're going back to the landlord's the one that's ultimately responsible.
Yes, absolutely. And then Mr. Carr made a good point in the message board response. When we get into offense and penalty, specifically subsection A, you do have the language, a landlord who violates or allows another to violate. And so that's all encompassing of sort of who all could fall under the behavior that's not permissible. And so. Yes.
Mayor, I also think maybe under, you'd mentioned A and B, under C, a landlord, still under 46094, a landlord does not interfere with the tenant's right. I
We
wonder
wanted
if that
there
one
too.
might be appropriate as well,
Yes.
property manager.
That's good. That was one I was going to ask about. Okay, council, are y'all good with the addition of the property manager as we have defined here? Okay.
My only concern would be if the designee's title isn't property manager, it's community manager or some other verbiage. So I would recommend something more, I guess, all-encompassing, like landlord or their designee versus landlord or property manager. Just so
Well-
there's not that technicality of I'm not a property manager, I'm a community manager, so it doesn't apply to me.
Well, I think the way we can solve that is use property manager here, but in the definition of property manager, include those other things that you were talking about.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then we'd be good. And that's a good point, is sometimes that's not their title, and
Yeah.
we don't want to leave that loophole.
Cool. I mean, yeah, other than that, I'm fine with it.
I would go ahead and add it under offense and penalty, under A, landlord.
You do want it there?
Yeah,
Okay.
just because then it doesn't limit if that's the real problem. Solve it right away.
Okay. Well, that's the other thing, is to, A, get what we need as people are trying to accomplish something, and take care of it then, and maybe it doesn't have to get up to that other level, which is going to take longer to do, probably.
And just if, I don't remember if I talked about this last time, but since Austin has had this, they've had very few complaints and problems with it, so it's more just the education stuff, so it's not going to be something, I believe that's going to be a real big sticking point for us.
I heard the exact same sentiment.
And that's good.
I also heard the sentiment shared that it was actually beneficial for law enforcement because there was previously calls made for people engaging in these types of organizing behaviors. But because they weren't permissible under the law, it sort of put law enforcement in a weird position. And so now it gives something to cite to show that it is in fact plausible, and it's enshrined here in an ordinance, so.
Yeah, and I'm certainly good with staff choosing to figure out, is it the property manager or the landlord, which way you want to go. I'm good with that too. So,
Good deal, thank you.
yeah, not trying to undo y'all's authority in any way. Are we good, council?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Mr. Carr.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And this will come back in sometime in October.
What did I say, the 8th? Is that the first?
All
I
right.
have one comment, Mayor.
Yes, ma'am. Ms. Garza, you go right ahead.
Thank you. I just wanted to take a moment to thank my former colleague, Maxfield Baker, for his unwavering commitment to advocating for and now alongside tenants. During the years I served with them, we pushed repeatedly for initiatives like this, though at the time we weren't able to secure the support we needed. So I just wanted to recognize that. I think that persistence is, it's so awesome to see that, but also Mr. Carr echoing what Councilwoman Rodriguez said, and his team for their continued neighbor-focused approach and working alongside our community. And for Mayor and Amanda for asking good questions and doing their nerd research thing. I appreciate it so much. I think this is such a great step for our community. I say nerd with tenderness, just FYI. I saw Amanda's face because I called her a nerd.
Okay, so if that concludes this one, then we will move on to item 2.
Receive a presentation regarding the Police Department's proposed policy 4.6.1, which governs surcharges for use of a departmental vehicle for secondary employment.
Mayor and Council, on June 3rd, 2025, the Police Department presented a work session item related to vehicle surcharges for secondary employment. During that meeting, Council asked that the department promulgate a standalone policy that would govern such changes. Chief Standridge is prepared today to discuss this new policy, Policy 4.6.1, and the adopted charges that will go into effect on October 1st, 2025. I'll now turn it over to Chief Standridge. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Good afternoon, Mayor, Council, Stan Standridge, Police Chief. For the benefit of everybody, to include our community, we are doing this work session to provide an awareness of the police department's new vehicle reimbursement policy, which is labeled 4.6.1. So I will champion Councilwoman Garza. When I first got to San Marcos, she asked several questions as it relates to why don't we charge for the use of a fleet vehicle for secondary employment. Secondary employment is an officer, a peace officer who is working contractually for any type of private business. There is a benefit to the private business. There's also a benefit for the community. And so we have a policy that's outside of 4.6.1 that actually governs secondary employment. We first discussed this in a very formal setting on June 3rd of this year, 2025, and we asked for formal guidance, and the guidance was from council was that you wanted a standalone policy that governs the approved amounts. Next slide. So staff met internally on numerous occasions, and we looked at the efficacy of secondary employment. We looked at the efficacy of take-home vehicles, and we ultimately shared with council back in June of 2025 that we believed, based upon our own experience plus academic research, that these vehicles being used for secondary employment do reduce social harm through visible presence. They do provide an operational efficiency. We have 79 employees with call-out requirements. Those employees who are working secondary employment are immediately available, and I provided many anecdotal stories relating where officers were working secondary employment and assisted with an in-progress call or at the direction of a supervisor to assist the city of San Marcos. We discussed at length no parking alternative at the police department. We discussed the impact that weather-related events have on the police department, and then we talked about mandatory call-outs across the department. Next slide. So to provide situational awareness for everybody, we have 42 officers working secondary employment. That represents 34% of sworn personnel. There are 54 reoccurring in-city jobs worked by these officers. And we cite some examples: Bobcat Quickie, San Marcos Consolidated Independent School District, the city of San Marcos, Texas State, and Amazon. In the process of going through this, I learned that Amazon is on select holidays, and it's typically as we near Christmas that they request officers. We just wanted to, for full transparency, provide that we have 8 courtesy officers working at different apartment complexes within the city. And then we explained back in June of 2025 that we do have an authorized out of city by 1.5 miles job that is actually at Promised Land, and they provide traffic direction on Lime Kiln Road for when that church assembles and then ends their service. Next slide. So we had to figure out what would be an effective vehicle surcharge, where to go. We had a meeting with the city manager's office, and Assistant City Manager Joe Pantalian gets credit for this. No, correction. It was Rodney Gonzalez that gets credit for this. Sorry, Joe, I tried. But Rodney receives the fair credit. We were trying to determine, how do you determine a market value for a vehicle? And Rodney obviously stated, why don't we use rental car companies? And the reason that made sense is because rental car companies already consider profit, maintenance, and insurance requirements associated with the use of their fleet vehicles. So our analysts went to work and determined that in the capital area of Texas, Central Texas, that to use a full-size SUV, and we picked the upper threshold vehicle, not all of our vehicles are full-size SUVs, but we wanted to err on the high end, that would cost $171.90. So we noted that law enforcement receives a 5% discount, so with that discount, it'd be $163 a day, which translates to $6.80 per hour. So a rental car company is going to charge us that amount, and that is going to cover fully their profit, their maintenance, and any insurance requirements. Next slide. Next slide. I'll give him a second. There we are. So, council asked that we promulgate a secondary or a standalone policy. We did. Please remember that we have a standalone secondary employment policy that governs what officers do not do while working secondary employment. But policy 6.4.1 specifically addresses the vehicle surcharge. We stuck with the $6.80 per hour for each hour a vehicle is used for secondary employment. Some jobs, albeit very few of them, actually require the use of the vehicle. Other jobs, the officers simply commute to that location, park, and go inside and fulfill whatever the need is. If that officer's origin is from outside the city of San Marcos, we want to recoup those costs to travel to that secondary employment. So we will charge those officers $3.40 to commute to that secondary employment. This is assuming that they were not already commuting into the city for an assigned or regular shift. Next slide. All right, with that, I'll entertain any questions, please.
Yeah, I have one, but if you have one, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just waiting for, I know Ms. Garza, I didn't know she had any.
I was watching.
Yeah. So my question was more so, I asked this question on the message board about liability. And the reason I asked is because the policy that y'all created, and I'm assuming the one that was attached with the bolded language, that's new language, or am I assuming correctly? That's been in there?
That is carryover language from secondary employment policy, but we want. That's
Oh.
I'll try
Maybe-
again.
Maybe now? Okay, I think it's
Okay.
good.
Good deal. That bolded language in the new policy is actually carryover language from the existing secondary employment policy. But Chief Clett and I discussed it from a policy perspective. It's so important, we wanted them to see the same thing in both policies.
Okay, yeah, I appreciate the clarification. So the reason I ask is because when we get into the policy itself, Section 3, which details secondary employment coverage, if we look at subsection C, I see the language officers should, parentheses, and are encouraged, in parentheses, to obtain their own supplemental occupational accident insurance policy. So in the case of an injury, the parenthesized language, though, for me, it's confusing. Is this language, when we use the word should, is it required? Or, because when we have should and are encouraged, which, I just want to understand, is it required or is it not?
I'm going to go first, but Mandy, if you'll come stand with me, because I'm going to quickly tap you. So come on up, please. Excuse me. So the city of San Marcos is insured through Texas Municipal League Intergovernmental Risk Pool. We've had numerous conversations, as have other police departments across Texas. At what point does that coverage cover an officer working secondary employment? And I'll give you two hypotheticals. The officer is working secondary employment at a large retail store. he or she walks outside in the scope of their just normal secondary employment and they miss a curb and they break an ankle. Who's going to pay for that injury? The city of San Marcos should not have to pay for that injury because they're doing employment outside of the normal scope and duties of a police officer. So that is what that's driving at. Contrast it to the second scenario. Same officer is working at that retail store and a robbery is underway. Officer intervenes, takes law enforcement action, and gets injured. That is in the scope of his or her duty as a San Marcos police officer. So there's two scenarios. And what we want our officers to realize, they really got to be educated on this, is scenario A may not be covered. Mandy, please help me.
Can I ask a question before that? If I'm a city employee, not a police officer, and I'm somewhere and I break my ankle, does medical cover me?
Your medical insurance can cover you, but I'm going to get out of Mandy's way.
Okay.
And Ms. Risk,
Workers' comp would not cover you. That's the distinction. Your medical
That's-
insurance would, but workers'
that's-
compensation
And that's the
coverage would not
specification that I
cover.
was looking for. Okay, which
normal-
is
if you're
probably
out
what she
normal
was
course of
just getting ready to say.
Yes.
yeah, and before you answer that question, I guess based on the two scenarios that were just provided, when we talk about this particular item here, are we talking about scenario A or are we talking about scenario B?
Well, that is that clause you were referring to, the should and are encouraged to is going to refer to really both. So let me just explain where the coverage kicks in. So as Chief mentioned in scenario A, step off a curb, twist their ankle, they're in secondary employment. Work comp under the city would not cover that because they're working at a separate job, secondary employment. However, that employer would, whoever is employing them would technically be responsible for that. However, they're contracting them, so they most likely do not have any kind of work comp coverage on them. It is basically seen as like a contract job, right? And so their health insurance, most likely, they can file it, but anytime you go to a doctor, one of the questions is, did this happen while at work? Well, while it didn't happen here, it happened while they were being paid, so they would technically need to check yes, right? And so health insurance would more than likely deny it as well. So that is why they should and are encouraged to. We cannot require them to take out that supplemental policy. It's really hard to quote a price on what that would cost them because it depends on age, any kind of other factors, right? It's not done through the city, it's not done through TML. It would be done through maybe an AFLAC. There's one that I believe is called Shield that is out there as well. And so there are some different supplemental companies. So in scenario B, that is addressed in, right there in A, so 3A, where it talks about an officer may be covered if they are acting under circumstances while performing a law enforcement function under the color of office that would require intervention under department policy or state law. That if they are performing that, so they see a robbery and they have to intervene because obviously a major law is being broken and that is part of policy that they, if they're an officer, that they would react, that could be covered. It more than likely will be. What would happen is something happens, they get injured while doing that, cut, fall, whatever. We would file it with work comp, and at that point, they are acting as an officer of City of San Marcos, so there's a very good chance it would get covered under work comp. I can't guarantee it, we would file it like any other claim we would.
Sure.
But since they would be acting under that policy, it could be considered covered.
Okay, so let's break that into two. So I appreciate the language itself, we can't require, totally get that. I guess that's why that language was sort of confusing to me, is because when we say should, it almost reads like a shall, like it's mandatory. And so perhaps, there's some tweaking on that language that's necessary. But it gets into the second question, and the question I asked specifically on the message board is because I can get, if I'm working secondary employment, as you said, is contract work, similar to contract work, I get injured in doing so. It's not related to any exterior thing that may be directly related to my work as a law enforcement officer. The city is not held liable, correct? Did I get that? Okay, so based on that logic, when we talk about the other question that I asked in the message board was, let's say they're utilizing the vehicle, let's use Chief's example of I hit a curb wrong, made some external damage to the vehicle. I wasn't on a call. It was purely an accident that took place during the time I was in contract work. The response is that the city, though, when it comes to repairs for that vehicle or even an accident, we would be held liable for that. And so I kind of want to understand where that differentiation lies if we're not going to physically be held liable for a physical injury. Why is it that we're held liable in the same instance during a contractual work for a car accident, which is costly?
Correct, yes. So what would actually happen is we carry liability on all of our vehicles. And so the liability policy would kick in on there. Work comp is, there's a lot of governing practices and laws that goes behind the work comp and sets those standards about day, time, place that qualifies. So that's, work comp really goes back to more of a Texas guideline law set that determines who covers it and who doesn't. And then when it's covered, right? But liability, we carry liability on all of our cars. Now, let's say that our officer is out working a secondary employment job, gets in an accident, and it is their fault, right? And there's another vehicle involved. The other vehicle, I would need to confirm, that may fall under the officers, because I know like medical would, medical would not be covered in the car accident. Our officers would if they're driving a city vehicle, most likely. Again, we're gonna file it and see if it gets covered. But also another part of our TML policy is they will actually subrogate. So if somebody else caused the damage, TML is gonna fight to get that recovered, so.
Okay, that completely addresses my concern, because I was just really trying to understand, is the assumption of risk almost like inevitable? We're automatically going to take it every time, but it's good to hear that there's other factors that are taken into consideration.
Yes,
Okay, great, thank you.
yes, you're welcome.
Ms. Garza's had her hand up, and you can be next. Ms. Garza?
Thank you, Mayor. I have a question for Chief Standridge. On average, how much does it cost to outfit a police vehicle? Like to take it from what would be an average car to a police vehicle?
Well, minus the car. How much, the question is, how much does it cost to upfit the car?
Yes, outfit it.
Chief Winkenwerder said probably about 20,000 for a fully marked unit.
Okay, the reason I asked is, while I appreciate all the effort you guys have done to start this conversation, I am concerned about comparing a police cruiser to a rental SUV and how that might underestimate the actual cost to the city. Like these aren't just vehicles; they're specifically what did you say? Outfitted vehicles with thousands of dollars of additional equipment. And so I guess my question is, when calculating the $680 hourly rate, did you take into consideration this cost of outfitting the vehicles with police-specific equipment, right? Because otherwise they would just rent from Enterprise, right? Like there's a reason why they're using their police vehicles.
Right, yeah, and I understand your question. It's a good question. Here's what I would say. From a negotiation perspective, the city's going to win some, the city's going to lose some, because not every vehicle that the officers will operate will be a full-size SUV. Many officers drive the smaller Charger, which is much, much less expensive. And so the total cost on that vehicle isn't $6.80. So for every Charger that's used for secondary employment, the city is actually going to accrue more dollars than probably what is the market. If you are, to Councilwoman Garza's question, if you're in the higher priced SUV, fully outfitted, then she's probably right. It's not fully compensable at $680 an hour if you consider all the equipment. Now, with that said, I would ask the equity question, is it appropriate for the officer to pay for the additional equipment when the equipment provides a direct benefit to the citizens of San Marcos? They're marked, they have the lights. We require them to be logged into the computer for the benefit of our community, because they have to be logged in and available for calls. and we require that they monitor the radios. So the radios are really there, computers are there for the benefit of the citizens. I think I may have answered the question. If not,
Right. I guess I understand that. I just think that if you're making a calculation, comparing again a police cruiser to a rental SUV, it's, I feel like it's not a super accurate comparison. I wonder if there's a way to look at like the average cost of, I know you said like not everybody drives around like the super souped up SUVs, but like what's the average cost of a police vehicle that it has like, that's like ready to roll, right? It has like all the equipment and stuff, and then use that amount. Who knows? Maybe it'll be lower than 680, maybe it'll be higher. I just think that that's like a weird comparison calculation, and also because whenever officers are using these vehicles, again, they are putting at risk like the entire vehicle if anything happens, including all of that equipment. So I'm just like curious as to if my colleagues have any insight on that, or any staff have any feedback or comments.
I don't really have any feedback. I couldn't hear everything that was said.
I think what I'm hearing is a policy question in regard, and I think it's a policy decision. If mayor and council would like to, what I'm hearing is amortize the cost of upfitting the vehicle, so that basically an officer who does use a city vehicle is also paying a pro rata share of what an upfitted vehicle is versus just an ordinary vehicle that could be rented anywhere. So I think that's the policy decision, is if y'all would like for staff to develop, some kind of way of calculating what that amortization would be and add that to that rate that we're proposing of the 680, then that could be done.
And the only feedback I would provide to that is we have communicated to our community that they can anticipate these charges, because that's going to have to be passed on to them come October 1. If we go back to the drawing board, then it probably wouldn't be fair to them, who may have already done their budgets in preparation for, to suddenly pay a remarkably different rate. I would just ask for council consideration on that.
Mayor, I think as far as that is concerned, I definitely hear you. I think though, given that when we talk about the costs that we put into these vehicles, whether that's through the lease agreements, whether that's through the upfitting that you mentioned, that's taxpayer dollars. So the taxpayer is already being involved in some way, shape, or form and impacted. When we have to go and get new vehicles and incur all of those additional expenses, those are also taxpayer dollars. And so I don't want us to selectively address only certain concerns from certain taxpayers. I think anybody who's looking at security understands that there's some sort of cost encumbered. And so I personally, I don't know if that's a decision we're making here today, but I would love to see the figures that do consider those additional, or do make those additional considerations.
And I think with direction, I think we could do that. I don't believe, Chief, if the amortization is something that's $25,000 and we're looking at what's the actual city usage versus someone using it for personal, it shouldn't astronomically change those numbers. But at least it provides an accountable method that mayor and council can feel like it's truly covering as much of the cost as possible for secondary employment, is one consideration.
And I think one layer that we may need to consider, which may be subdermal, it's, if I'm that large retail store and I'm hiring the officers, but there have been 0 crashes associated with secondary employment, you're now asking me to finance your fleet directly. So that would be my concern from our customers, so to speak. So if I'm the ISD as an example, and there have been no associated fleet crashes for anything that the police department has done in rendering services, but now you're asking me to pay a higher cost for the what if, then now you're actually asking the ISD to subsidize your fleet.
Yeah, and can we be clear when you're talking about ISD here, this is not school resource officers, correct? Or is it?
Yes, And no, the
It
SR.
includes them, I'm thinking football games and those kinds of things.
All of those. So a lot of the school resource officers work all of those. So those are secondary employment.
But in their job as a school resource officer, that's not, because that's what we assign them
Right,
to.
right,
So
yeah.
we're not talking about during the time that they're school resource officers, correct?
Correct, that is
Because we're saying SMCISD, and that may confuse the public and,
That is correct. Yes,
okay,
ma'am.
so
And I
not
think-
SROs.
I think the distinction, I don't hear that it's necessary, I think the crashes is one thing, because that would be the insurance. So if we were saying, and I don't hear council saying that, I don't hear them saying
Well,
take
I
on
need
the
to ask everybody
insurance
here,
costs.
because we
But-
haven't weighed in.
But one consideration that council can discuss and see where you want to go with this is what I see is paying a pro rata share of the vehicle and equipment cost, right? And so that's how I see what's being asked, but of course, y'all would need to decide if that's the direction you want to go. But Chief, I think it's a small amount in terms of saying, hey, not only are you're using a city asset, you're using a public asset, and this is for rental of that public asset, if you will.
Yeah, I just, I'm
Go ahead,
sorry.
Ms. Garza.
What my like main concern was, like just like the equation that was used, right? Like you're using the 680 because it's what a rental company would charge, but again, there's a reason why they're not just going to the rental company and getting a car. Their cops, to do their job, they might need to have their cop car. I don't know. Yeah, I don't mean to like put any cost burden on folks like the ISD or whatever. I just think, yeah, if we're gonna do this, it should be done properly with like a well thought out equation and not just, oh, like, let's not look into it more because some entities decided to make their budget before council made a final decision on this. Like, that's just bad business sense on their end, no offense.
Okay, I think I've lost track a little bit on this as to where we are. I need to ask a question real quick. That 680 was on which type of car?
The large size SUV. Chevy Tahoe.
That's what I thought. But if I were going to a car rental place, what's the difference in what I would pay, generally speaking, between the Charger and the Tahoe?
Big. Probably as much as a $75 delta per day.
Per hour?
Per day. Well,
Now,
I'm
what would-
considering
what
the
would
aggregate, yes.
What would the difference be per hour, because we're talking here about per hour,
Yeah, whatever 75 is divided by 24 hours, I don't know.
divided by 24?
Yes, ma'am.
Roughly three
Three.
bucks.
Okay.
But for clarification, regardless of what vehicle they're using, we're still using the 680 rate. So if they're driving a Charger, we're in theory charging them more than what the actual.
And that was my point earlier.
Awesome.
Yes,
That's-
Councilman.
That's where I thought we were going, okay.
Yeah.
Is your comment on what we're talking about right now, or is it something new? Because if it's something new, it needs to wait, and we need to finish up this, I've got to go around the table on this last concept.
I think it's within this conversation.
It needs to be on what Ms. Rodriguez was talking about.
Yeah, she's talking about several different things, but mine's is about a crash. If a crash happens, why you're doing the secondary employment, and the other party decides to lawsuits, who gets a lawsuit? We do? How does that work?
Risk management.
Yes. So with it being a city and vehicle, we're going to get named in the lawsuit, and Sam can probably speak up to this a little bit more as well, but we will get named, right? Because it is a city vehicle, and what we'll do is we'll file it with TML, they'll review it, they'll look at time, place, event, again, and they'll determine if the city has a liability, if the other person has a liability, whatever it may be.
And
But
TML is the Texas Municipal League.
Intergovernmental risk pool, yes, ma'am.
Thank
That's who
you.
our liability coverage and our
I'm
work
thinking
comes
for those
through.
at home,
Yes, thank you.
playing along at home, okay.
Yes.
Couldn't have said it better, but it all depends on the facts. The facts always matter in those cases, but she's right, because it's a city vehicle, we're likely going to be joined just for that fact alone.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean we may not have defenses, but
Thank you very much. That was my question.
Okay, that was outside what we were doing here.
I
So I
don't
need to
think so,
go
but it's
back
okay.
to what you were talking about. I'm sorry, I'm working on technology here. So I missed part of that. But what it sounds to me like is, from my opinion, we're getting way overcomplicated in this. And, you know, we were receiving nothing. We're looking at receiving the 680. And the more we try to do this and cover maybe this and this, I think it's just, I think it's getting too complicated. So can you help me understand a little more?
Oh, I mean, I didn't bring up the change in rates. My concerns
No, I
were,
was talking about that, but back to the, what
yeah,
you were
my
talking
concerns
about
were
with
all
some-
about the city's liability,
Okay.
right? Like, yes, I get it, we weren't previously charging or
Right.
whatever. But this whole process, per my own opinion, you do get in some sort of liability for the question that he just asked. And that's why I did think it was sort of germane to the conversation, because regardless of the defenses that we may have to provide at the time of the potential case hearing, the community is not privy to those in the same ways that maybe perhaps we are. What they hear is the liability, and they hear that a city vehicle was involved with a crash that hopefully didn't, but could have potentially injured one of our own civilians, right? So I wanted to understand personal liability on the basis of the policy they provided us, and of course that was around that confusing language on should or and are encouraged, which that seems clear to me now. And then as far as the actual vehicle itself, the accident is who carried that liability. But it sounds like from what Ms. Risk provided to us is that we do have that opportunity to inquire further. It's not an absolute assumption of risk.
But that's how things are working now, correct? What we're talking about charging the 680 doesn't change any of that, correct? Or is the fact that we're charging for it change any of this liability, who's responsible, et cetera?
You know, we haven't charged in the past, but it should not change it because we do carry liability on those vehicles regardless.
That's what I'm thinking.
We would file that as part of it, but, again, since we carry the liability on the vehicle, when we're talking about the vehicles themselves, then it would be under our liability policy.
Yeah. Which I definitely understood. It was just more of a clarification on, given that the scope of work is different for this particular type of employment, is whether or not that liability carried on in the same way as it was applicable during a actual course day of work or something like that. So that was my only question.
Okay.
What
All
I
right, so
equate it
you
to
weren't
is-
suggesting anything different with all of this? Because when you repeated it, I thought we were going down a path that,
No, I heard Ms. Garza ask about the equipment.
Yep.
And I was just saying that that's a policy decision for mayor and council to decide if you wanted to amortize that cost for the upfitting of the vehicle so that it's the officers paying for rental of the equipment and
and the car.
the vehicle.
Or the
And
vehicle.
I equate the liability aspect as just like our own personal vehicles. If you have a personal vehicle and you allow your cousin or somebody to use it, it's under your liability, but you've made that consent to allow them to utilize it. And so it doesn't mean that you wouldn't go through some type of subrogation or whatever, but it's your asset, you own the policy. And so that's why this would be the same in this particular scenario.
And Mayor, Chief Stevens and Chief Klett, they're the numbers guys in the rooms. They have amortized $22,000 cost over 5 years. It would add an additional $2.11. So 211 plus your 680 is $8.91. If it helps us get this solidified today, then I would be fully supportive of what Councilwoman
Second. No, just
Garza.
kidding.
So that new number, Mayor, would become 891 instead of 680.
Right. If you could, I'm fine with that, but if you could email me the methodology, that'd be great. Sometimes y'all be playing games with your math.
Okay, so I need to go around the table to see if y'all are interested in doing that additional charge because of the equipment and the vehicle. Is the equipment that's in the vehicle, how much different, if any, is it between the Charger and the Tahoe?
They're going to be
It's the
very
same-
similar. Yes, ma'am.
Same lights,
Yes, ma'am.
computer holder, okay. So I'm gonna assume that Ms. Garza is a yes. Let me start over here with Ms. Rodriguez about adding that additional.
Yes, ma'am. With just one more question on the hourly rate, I saw in the policy it's going to be reviewed annually by y'all. Given that it's, the numbers that we're seeing now are based on the market, I'm assuming that's going to be the same practice for when y'all do review those annually? Is changes in market?
Yeah, we're actually going to get it from the market. Our crime analyst will do that and then visit with finance to make sure that we hit the mark. Yes,
Okay,
ma'am.
okay.
And we would probably do that in preparation for any change to policy by October 1.
Okay, and it was 811, is that
No,
correct?
891.
891, yeah, I'm okay with that.
Mr. Gonzalez, Saul Gonzalez?
Well, thank you. This equipment that we're talking about, are we talking about the radios as well?
Radios, computers, everything.
Because that'd be hard to have communications with y'all guys if something happens down the street. No, I'm not in favor of that.
I'm not either. Mr. Scott?
Well, I'm not for it, and one of the main reasons is because the equipment on one vehicle is not the equipment on another vehicle, because a lot of times the police department carries their equipment over to the new vehicle, and that equipment's already been paid for, so,
Talking about officers using existing equipment.
well, okay. I think they could use it, because,
The question is, we've talked about charging them the $680, just basically to rent the vehicle.
Right.
Now we're talking about adding an additional couple bucks for the equipment, all the police equipment that's in the car.
I'm not for that.
Okay, so you're a no. Mr. Mendoza?
I'm a no on that one, ma'am.
Mr. Lorenzo Gonzalez?
It sounds like it doesn't matter anymore, but, I mean, I was originally I was a no because I didn't want to kick the can down the road while we calculate more and more fees, but if we did it in the 5 minutes that we were waiting, I was prepared to be a yes, but like I said, I think at this point it doesn't really matter.
So you're a yes or a no?
I'll be a yes.
Okay. Yeah, the reason I'm a no is that they're using the vehicle that they're assigned. And so what's in there is, I hate to say it's not their fault, but, I mean, they didn't ask for all that extra stuff. It's not an option for them. So I think the 680 is fine. So that's where I was on that. And we have, 1, 2, 3, we have 4 no's and 3 yeses.
So we
that's a no.
adopt the 680 and 340 in policy?
I'm sorry, the 340?
That's the one-time commute to come
Oh,
into San
yes, the
Marcos.
half of that.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, is everybody good with that, which is where we left it once before? Ms. Garza? I'm seeing all heads nodding, so
Okay.
yes, we're good with what we came in with.
Yes, ma'am.
Anything else? We've had a good discussion. I think I certainly understand a whole lot more about how all this works.
Thank you, Mayor, Council.
Okay, thank you.
Thank y'all for putting the work together. I know it's taken a lot, so thank y'all for.
Thank you.
and For getting it across the finish line. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you. It only took 4 years, but better late than never.
And we're on to item 3.
Receive an update on the airport master plan.
Mayor and council, before we begin today's presentation regarding the airport master plan, I'll share that the original airport master plan was adopted by city council in April 2021. That plan set the foundation for airport growth, including priorities like extending runway 1735, improving taxiways, and strengthening existing infrastructure. The master plan is also a federal requirement. Keeping it current ensures the city remains eligible for Federal Airport Administration and Texas Department of Transportation Aviation grant funding. Since 2021, the fleet mix at the airport has shifted, with larger aircraft using the field and interest in potential future air carrier service. These changes prompted the need to update specific portions of the plan, but not redo it entirely. The update focuses on a few key areas: identifying the ultimate size and location of a new fuel farm to serve larger aircraft, determining the best location for a potential terminal complex, reevaluating runway and taxiway alternatives based on the terminal's placement, analyzing roadway connections and traffic impacts needed to serve the terminal, updating the capital improvement plan to reflect these adjustments and prepare for air carrier operations. These updates will help ensure the airport remains a regional asset ready to support businesses, education, emergency response, and economic development. Thank you for your time, and I'll now turn it over to Texas Aviation Partner staff Jim Wimberly, Cassidy Baronato, as well as Texas Aviation Planning Director with Garver Engineering, Nathan Paulsgrove. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak with you today. Like Ms. Reyes said, this is part of the Airport Master Plan process, so this meeting that we're having today and discussing the Airport Master Plan with you all is something that we want to do to provide clarity on what's included in the master plan. We also want to mention that we're not seeking any action today. We're really just looking to give you an overview of the plan and then address any questions that you have. Like you see on the screen, an airport master plan is an infrastructure development plan for an airport. And there's really three key things that we feel like are really important to the success of that plan. One, we want it to be a realistic roadmap for the airport's future. We want it to be something that you can do and achieve. Two, it needs to provide clear development priorities. You should come out of a master plan having a very good understanding of what are the things that I need to focus on accomplishing in the next 5 years, 10 years, 20 years. And then finally, it should really be a tool that helps you manage the airport and make capital decisions at the airport going forward. Obviously, you don't want to do an update to your master plan every year, and so it's important that the master plan itself has some flexibility built into it, and so it can really be something that helps inform your decision-making over the coming years. Next slide. Ms. Reyes already covered all this very well. This is obviously not a comprehensive update to the master plan that was approved back in 2021. This is a very specific update focused on the items that she mentioned. So I'll go ahead and go to the next slide. So stakeholder and public engagement is always something that's important as part of the master planning process. It's required by the FAA, the Federal Aviation Administration, as well as TxDOT Aviation when we go through this process. In July of this year, we did a public open house for the master plan, giving the community at large an opportunity to come in, see the proposed concepts for the development of the airport. We also gave a very similar presentation to the Airport Advisory Board in June and gave updates and had meetings with TxDOT Aviation as well as TxDOT Highways related to the portions of the plan that are applicable to them. Next slide. So touching on some of the key aspects of the plan and what came out of this update to your airport master plan, we did confirm that the proposed airfield development plan, so when I talk about airfield, that's runways, taxiways, and instrument approaches at the airport, the same proposed development plan that came out of the 2021 master plan was confirmed to still be the right way to go for this particular update to the master plan. The key thing, as you heard Ms. Reyes say, was a big aspect of it is focusing on the development of runway 1735, which is basically the north-south runway you see on the slide there. We want to look at improving that runway from a length perspective, but then also strengthening the runway as well to be used by larger aircraft. Next slide, please. Now, as we also touched on, a key aspect of this plan was we felt it prudent to plan for a potential passenger terminal. Where would that go if that demand materialized in the future? You'll notice we did not get into specific facility planning criteria looking at the sizes of various components of buildings or anything like that. We're really looking about where would we want to protect space for such a facility if it was needed. There were two alternatives that were analyzed. The one that you see on the screen was the preferred alternative. This is located basically where the airport management offices were, or are now. This area was selected because of its good access to the airfield, as well as its direct access to State Highway 21. The other area that was reviewed as a potential site was just to the south of this as well along State Highway 21. However, ultimately that site wasn't selected because of the interest in hangar development that you have in that location. Next slide, please. Next slide. There we go. So with that established, this one may be a little difficult to see, at least looking at it on the screen to your behind you, but we wanted to look at roadway development in the area and what should the roadway look like to be able to support the future growth we see on that northwest side of the airport. So you can see the orientation slightly changed here, but you still have the terminal area, which would have a kind of a traditional loop road around an airport where you have a consolidated entry and exit point for vehicle traffic, and then essentially a loop or a ring configuration with parking in the middle. You'll also notice as you look to the left of the page, the existing entrance for Airport Drive would be relocated. That would be so that intersection would align with the signal there on State Highway 21 and FM 110, so you have a consolidated intersection for all those roadways. The final thing I'll note is this does also include the development of an airport perimeter road. That's a roadway basically to allow fuel trucks and other airport vehicles to move inside the fence to be able to access those areas without having to go on public roadways. Next slide, please.
Wait, I have a question real quick on this slide, if that's okay. I heard you mention, and I saw this in the image, the existing airport entry to be removed, and I heard you're talking about additional ones. Where do y'all have just a general idea of, would it be off of 21? Where would that fall?
It's shown on there. It's a little hard to maybe see it on the call-up, but it's basically right there where FM 110 intersects with SH 21, so you would be able to go straight across there to enter onto Airport Drive.
And then that's that loop thing that y'all are talking about that
Well,
they would
so
go through?
The loop is slightly separate. So the loop is over there where you see the red and the orange area. That's specific for the proposed passenger terminal. The Airport Drive one is so you can access all the existing development area.
Councilmember, I believe you're talking about the roundabout.
On the left, yeah, that's what
Oh,
it's
that,
called.
yeah.
Yes. Is that what you're talking about, that roundabout on the left side?
When I was speaking about the ring, I was talking more about the passenger terminal area. But yeah, the roundabout is also to help connect to 21, or FM 110 as well.
Okay.
Roundabout.
On the left side of the? Oh, you have an inversion?
In certain cases.
Oh, okay.
We'll see how this all goes.
Okay. Next slide. This we just dubbed as miscellaneous alternatives. Really what we were focused on here was looking at where specific pieces of kind of key airport infrastructure were going to be located, specifically the fuel farm. If the air traffic control tower ever needed to be relocated, where that would go, as well as your airfield electrical vault. The electrical vault is basically the central hub where commercial power comes in to feed all the airfield lights that are needed for inclement weather and nighttime operations. The main things that to note here is the ultimate tower location that was identified as the larger yellow block that you see based on discussions with the current tower manager. We had some identification of that being the preferred location because it gives some more separation from the other hangars. The aqua box that you see kind of in that bottom left-hand corner is where the electrical vault would go. The main focus there is just to take it out of the center of that grass area that you have there so you could have more space for future development. And then the fuel farm is the orange area that's you see kind of on the south side of the drawing there. That's where the ultimate fuel farm would go. Next slide. And then we updated the land use plan as well. I won't spend too much time on this. This basically shows how the various properties at the airport, what types of development they're best suited for. And so the main update here was adding in the proposed terminal location. Next slide. Okay, so now talking about capital improvements. You heard me mention earlier that a key part of a master plan is really understanding what are those prioritized improvements that we need to focus on. Over the next 10 years, the focus is really on rehabilitating and improving existing facilities, specifically with things like the fuel farm, the air traffic control tower, making some drainage improvements, while also focusing on lengthening, strengthening, and improving runway 1735, the runway that I spoke about earlier. Next slide, please. So this slide gives an overview of the proposed funding plan for this. So all the projects that we're talking about in the next 10 years in the CIP all have the eligibility for grant funds that can be received from the FAA or TxDOT Aviation or other various sources to be able to help meet those funding needs. And so the general split on most of those funding sources is about a 90-10 split. So 90% federal or state money, 10% local money. And so basically you're only hopefully having to pay 10 cents on the dollar. That does vary sometimes based on specific FAA or TxDOT Aviation requirements with a given program where maybe that becomes a 95-10 or a 95-5 split, which can be a little bit more desirable. But as you can see from looking at the slide, the number one thing focused on in 2026 is the replacement of the fuel farm. The fuel farm that you have currently is aged and does need to be replaced. We also, in the next few years, have the improvement of the air traffic control tower in there. That's a FAA discretionary grant that the airport is intending to pursue to be able to make some improvements there. We also have improvements to runway 1735. Like I mentioned, one of the things that will happen first is runway 1735 and 1331 are currently coupled. Those runways will be decoupled. That's a safety improvement that's proposed and included as part of TxDOT Aviation's current CIP for the next rolling 3-year period. Beyond that, there's additional improvements for runway 1735, as well as some rehabilitation of the existing apron pavement at the airport to make sure that it is safe and usable for aircraft. Next slide. And so with that, next steps are, ultimately, this is something that we'll seek council approval on. We'll also update the airport layout plan drawing, which is basically a schematic drawing that has to be reviewed and approved by TxDOT Aviation. And then, of course, there'll be ongoing capital planning for the airport over the coming years on an annual basis. With that, I'm happy to take any questions.
My question is back to the chart of all the different things and when they're going to hopefully be implemented. Where is the new road that you're talking about? Is it on that list?
The new roadway?
The new entrance road.
So could you go back to the list, please, on the?
One more. That list. Is
So
it
no,
on that list?
that one is not on that list.
And is that going to be a 90-10 or is that going to be an all on us?
Typically, you can pursue funding for that at a 90-10 split. I mean, ultimately, sometimes you have to make decisions if you would prefer to wait on grant funding
Right.
for something like that or do something else, but it should be eligible for that.
Okay. Why is it not on the list?
We were focusing more on some of the other improvements related to the airfield facilities, as well as the fuel farm and things that have a kind of a direct need for aeronautical use.
I get the difference in uses, but, okay. Ms.
My
Rodriguez.
question is just operating hours. At what time do flights, are they no longer allowed to come in? Or is it just 24/7?
Yeah, so the airport operates 24 hours a day, 7 days a week,
Okay.
so there's no proposed curfew or anything like that for the airport.
Okay, because now that I see the landing strip, it definitely, I live in Blanco Vista. It definitely makes sense why at like 2, 3 a.m. sometimes I hear these loud noises. Just wanted to, that was a question I've been curious about, so thank you.
Do you have a question? Any other questions?
The question I have
Mr.
is-
Sal Gonzalez, it's now your turn.
Thank you, Mayor. I didn't realize you raised your hand. When it comes to the fuel farm, how far is that from the highway?
Are you talking about the proposed one or the current one?
Proposed one.
So typically, can we go to the map that shows the roadway? So typically what we like to do when you're designing a fuel farm is we like to have a public access side where fuel deliveries can come in. And so typically what your offset would be from Airport Drive to probably where that fuel farm starts is 100 feet or so. And that's going to give you space for like an 18-wheeler to come in, drop a load of fuel, and then pull back out. But typically the way we want it is to have about that much space for the fuel truck to deliver the fuel, and then there's a fence along the fuel farm, and then you can have secure sided access for fuel trucks from like your fixed base operator, which is essentially like the gas station at the airport, to be able to come offload the fuel from the pumps and then take it wherever it needs to go on the airfield.
Thank you. Thank you.
Sure.
Any other questions? If not, we thank you, and we look forward to future progress at the airport.
Thank you.
All right, council, we're now to item 4.
The city council will convene an executive session pursuant to the following sections of the Texas Government Code. A, Section 551.071, consultation with attorney to receive legal advice regarding 1, a request for dissolution of the Cotton Center Development Agreement and the release of associated tracts of land from the city's wastewater CCN and possible settlement of all related matters. 2, matters related to possible incentives for Project AVSM. B, Section 551.074, personnel matters to deliberate regarding the compensation and benefits for the following city council appointees: 1, city manager; 2, municipal court judge; and 3, city attorney.
Looking for a motion to go into executive session. Motion from Ms. Rodriguez, seconded by Mr. Gonzalez. Ms. Trevino.
Ms. Rodriguez. Mr. Saul Gonzalez. Ms. Garza.
Aye.
Mayor Houston.
Aye.
Mr. Scott.
Aye.
Mr. Mendoza.
Aye.
Mr. Lorenzo Gonzalez.
Aye.
The motion passes 7-0.
And we will go into executive session at 4:29. Council, take 1. Mr. Trevino, our next item is
Questions and answer?
question and answer with press and public. And who has signed up?
Mr. Baker.
Mr. Baker.
Yes, my name is Maxfield Baker. My question is regarding the right to organize, and as it extends from the National Tenants Bill of Rights and the strategic initiative that you all had adopted as a plan for this year. The question is, trying to think of the right way to phrase this. Will this, for one, would you all remind at the beginning of your 6 p.m. meeting, giving folks an update about the tenants' right to organize ordinance moving forward and the date that that'll be on, just so that it's spoken into the record? I think some of our club members might be showing up for 6 p.m. They might not know that everything was at 3 anyhow.
I get your point.
Yeah. So I know y'all do that from time to time just to kind of get the word out about something cool that happened and that y'all are doing. But the other question is regarding the right to organize. Is that going to be guaranteed for our low-income housing tax credit apartment complexes as well? And as an extension of that, Councilmember Mendoza, I emailed you and Councilmember Saul Gonzalez and Amanda Hernandez back in April about the low-income housing tax credit policy and whether you would consider discussing the Tenants' Bill of Rights at your workforce housing policy as a means to adopt that into our low-income housing tax credit matrix, that in order for folks to receive that designation and that letter of no objection, that we, adopt separate from the city's larger ordinances around Tenants' Bill of Rights. I'm curious if you wouldn't mind answering, why we hadn't heard back from you, either one of you, since April, and whether we can expect the Workforce Housing Commission to undertake that issue.
First off, it's a council committee, it's not a commission.
Thank you.
And have y'all even met since April?
Actually, yeah, I can get into that. So we did discuss that to bring it up, but we wanted to actually see what direction the rest of the council was going into with the adoption, like we just did. We are going to be discussing it, yes, sir. I can say that I've spoken to my colleagues about it.
Great. Well, I would love to offer, my services and availability if you all would like to have someone who's well-referenced with the requests and the kind of different issues going on with it. So thank you all.
Mayor, can I answer one of the questions as far as applicability to Light C projects? It's not necessarily with an answer, it's with a commitment that I will get you an answer. At first glance, it looks like it would apply to any property, but I definitely hear you on making sure.
My quizzical look is, why would it not? But it's a good question to ask.
Yeah, I was
yeah.
thinking the same thing. I'm like, as long as we don't do a carve out for them, wouldn't it just
Yeah.
automatically apply?
Yeah, well, we'll get legal and the housing committee can confirm all that.
Thank you.
And I will make that announcement
Thank you.
before citizen comment. Okay. And is that the only
That's on the
person?
list. That's on the list.
All right. Well, in that particular case, there being no further business on our agenda, I will adjourn us at 5:45. Council?